Shalom, good evening. This is Avraham Shira for Nar Shalom and Facebook and Patreon. You know, sometimes you learn something and you get so excited, you just got to share it. You know, I've been in this book, Likutei Moharan, for 30 years, and I still get excited, and that just keeps me coming back. And part of that excitement is being able to share it with you all. The miracle of this technology is that there's always a way to get the truth out there. And tonight, I found this Torah. I must have learned it 3 or 4 times over the last 30 years, but every time it hits you. And he says like this in Torah Ayin Chet 78 of the first section of the book, Vayiten oz l'malko v'yerem keren mishicho. He gives strength to his king, bold strength to his king, and he lifts up the horn of his anointed. And of course, this is from the first book of Samuel. We're speaking about King David and King Saul and the anointing of kings. Because to be anointed means to be the Messiah. And there can be many Messiahs in Judaism, depending on the time and the place. Now, of course, there is this idea of the final Messiah. We're not going to worry about that too much. But we're going to talk tonight about how divine speech happens. And it happens inside any person who does the right moves, the right time, and the right way. So listen closely. There is in this one verse of Tanakh the concepts of Messiah, divine inspiration, the unification of God and his indwelling presence. That means how God appears here in the world. And the revival of the dead. All these concepts are in one verse. Now it's going to take the Rebbe quite a while to develop all of them, but we're going to focus on the basics here tonight. And you're going to see that what seems very far away is actually very close when you want it bad enough. Because of course, the beginning of creation, God wanted to reveal that he's king. If you have as much power as God does, the first thing you want to do is reveal it. But you have to have somebody to reveal it to. But because of the greatness of God's light, there was nothing to receive it. There was nothing great enough to hold it. The light would break any vessel that it would go into. And therefore God was required to contract his light within the worlds. Now understand this. God has a limitation. What's his limitation? His greatness in contrast with his wanting to share. When you're great, you want to share. When you have a gift, you want to give it away. And so, but he had to create and contract himself into the worlds in order to have a relationship. Otherwise, everything would be obliterated by his light. That God's kingship is the kingship in all worlds. There's only one king, and he's king in all worlds. But the focus on this verse is that there's a multiplicity of little worlds. That's you and me. That's every time, space, and intention that happens in all of creation. That's called a world. The Baal Shem Tov defines it for us very simply. Anywhere there's a time, there's a place, and there's an intention is called an energy unit called a world. Okay? And each of those has something called Malchut, the revelation of the king. Now it's our job to reveal it in each place. That the power of kingship, this power of giving over, is enclosed within these worlds. Now you think that the greatest power of the king is to give his power over? Not correct. That's one of his powers. The king's powers to sit on the throne and say, here's 5 billion for highways, and here's 5 billion for recreation, and another 5 for education, etc., etc. That's giving. And the king has to do that. But there's a greater power than giving. Listen closely. God enclosed himself in the worlds. He enclosed himself in the world in order to receive. In other words, God hid himself in order to listen to you and me he hid himself not to give, but to receive. And essentially, for who we are and the world we live in as speaking beings, the power of listening is greater than the power of speaking. So God hid himself in the worlds in order that he could listen to us. And therefore the whole nation called Israel came out. He tells us from where? That there would be some nation to receive this power of receiving. So a king has to give, but his real power is to receive. He has to sit on the throne all day long and listen to everybody's requests. Everybody that's praying to him, and everybody that's got a petition for him, and every lawyer in town, and every banker behind the scenes. He has to listen to all of them. That's a greater power than just writing checks. Okay? Ki ein melech blo am, because there is no king without a nation. So he had to create the Jewish people, a people who would receive his kingship. Now the other nations were offered the Torah at the time that it was given 3,500 years ago down south of here in the desert. Okay? It was offered to other nations and they didn't want it. It's a famous midrash. Each nation was offered it and they said, well, what's in it? And God said, well, you're not allowed to steal, you're not allowed to kill, you're not allowed to commit adultery. He went through the 10 Commandments and they said, no, it's too much for us, we don't want it. And the Jews said, no, we'll take it. A good business deal, we'll take it. And they were given this power of receiving. Where did the souls of Israel come from? From this world of speech. In other words, all powers that you have, the power of thinking, the power of speaking, the power of feeling, are found in their root in the spiritual realm. In other words, if I have the power of speech and you have the power of speech, guess what? We're both getting it from the same place. But the Jews had a concentrated feature that they were all from this same place. Whereas not all the nations are the same about when it comes to this. It says in Shira, King Solomon said, Nafshi yatsa b'dabro. My soul, which is your speech, goes out in his word. In other words, you're sitting quietly, meditating under a tree. You're being quiet. And you have this urge to speak, this surge of power to emote, to express, to tell, to sing. All of this is speech. So what the King Solomon is telling us is that when you get that urge to speak, it might be God's urge through you. And it might not. And so you have to have the sensitive equipment to be able to tell the difference. Because if you go out like some of these crazy people and say, God told me to do it, and they happen to have committed some murder, it's a hard sale. You know what I mean? God doesn't want murder. And anybody who says that they do things in God's name and it's something violent like that, of course they're crazy. But the principle of the idea is that we all contain this power of speech. And when we learn silence, which we get through listening, then we can start to hear the real speech that's emerging from within. He repeats the idea that the souls of the Jews come out of there. Why are Jews so talkative? Why are Jews so powerful in so many places? Why are so many lawyers Jews? Because they have this power of speech. Because they came from the world of speech. And they came from the world of speech because God created them that way to communicate back to Him, to pray. Vadiboru b'chinat malchut, and speech is the idea of kingship. Who's the king of any country? The one whose word is law. And Shamru Eliyahu Navi called the mouth the place of kingship. That everything happens from the mouth, from the speech. B'chinat shechina, which is also an aspect of the indwelling of God's presence. And we've already learnt in our daily Patreon classes and our master meditation classes on YouTube, on Web Yeshiva, this idea that the speech dwells in the mouth, and when you are whole with God, your mouth collects all the power in your soul. In other words, your mind goes into your mouth. Your heart goes goes into your mouth. Your feet, your hands, all of you is focused in one place. That's called a koma shlema in Kabbalah. That means all 10 sfirot, all powers, all 10 powers of your soul are focused and concentrated in your mouth. And that's when you know something's happening over there. Something powerful is coming out of you. And that's the Shekhinah. She wants to speak through us because she wants to get the word out too. Ki shochenet itam tamid blu hafsek rega. Because the Shekhinah dwells with the Jewish people without any pause. Now you might say, where was the Shekhinah in the Shoah? Where was the Shekhinah in the exiles? All the exiles that we've been through for 300 years. Because we came out of Egypt, we were technically not in exile anymore, but that didn't last, well, it lasted a while. But still, the Shekhinah dwells with the Jews and with other nations. We should not forget this. That the Shekhinah is an international guest. She can go anywhere she wants to go, and she can dwell with any person at any time, at any place, depending on their deeds. And this, Elijah the prophet told us over and over, the divine presence will rest, the divine speech will be on any person. It depends on their deeds. It's in the beginning of Tana de Be'eliyahu. Look at it over there. As it's written, that God will even dwell with a person when they're impure. All we got to do is say, God, I'm sorry, I'm impure. Help me. I want to talk to you anyways. I don't care. Because it's not about our level anymore. It's about his presence. Ve'ema banim. Now this concept, Ema banim, the mother of children, is a very common idea, right? There's billions of mothers of children in this world. But in Kabbalah, it means the mind, Bina, the left brain is the power center of speech, and the mouth is the child of the mother. In other words, your mouth is an extension of your left brain. Chokhmah, wisdom, feeds intuitive consciousness into the left brain of Bina, and then it comes out through the mouth. And so this idea, Ema Banim, is the mother thought that goes into speech. Now, why is that important to us? Because a mother always travels with her children. Now, Baruch Hashem, I have a wife and I have children, and I've seen, my daughters have children. They don't leave their kids alone. You don't leave your kids alone, not in a park and not in the supermarket. And even when you go to sleep, you don't want to leave them alone. Especially when they're little and cute and they don't make too much trouble. Those kids are the symbol of the carrier of the speech of the mother, of the mindset of the mother, of the heart of the mother. Rabbi Nachman teaches us in another place that the child receives part of their personality from the mother's milk. And the quality of that milk depends on the mother's spiritual state at the time when she is nursing. So if a woman's angry, don't nurse. Serious. Sounds a little funny, but it's not. If a woman is in a loving, joyous mood, that's the time to nurse. If you're angry, your anger will go into the milk. Okay. Ve'ena shochachat otam, and the mother never forgets her children. Kain hadibur, so too speech. Especially divine speech, hu bechinat shekhinah. This is the divine presence that comes how? Through speech. Now, Moses saw the burning bush in last week's chapter, Shemot. Right? And the bush, he heard a voice coming from the bush. Now, the Bible, the Torah doesn't tell us the bush spoke, right? That's a little too cartoon for us, right? But the divine presence dwelled on the bush with a fire she'enenu ukal, a fire that did not consume the bush itself. Now, that was just a physical metaphor of the soul of the Jewish people, and the speech that came out of it was the divine presence. Okay, and that's dwelling tamid with the Jewish people, and the mother is the Shekhinah herself that goes with them. Olechet ima adam tamid, and that power goes with a person. Now, even if you're not a person that's pursuing Hashem, and you're not interested in mitzvot, and you're not interested in God, you're not interested in the Jewish, nothing. You want to make money and have a good time. fine. Your speech is still with you. And even if you don't know it, you can say things that are actually from a higher realm without even knowing it. It depends on the situation, depends on what needs to be said, when and where and how. And God uses all of us for this. He's running the planet through all of us, whether or not we're high spiritual beings or not. He brings a verse from Yirmiyahu, that the measures of my speech are in him. Zachor eskarenu. Remember and I will remember. You see the symbiotic relationship? We're told to remember and God will remember. And we both need this. These two powers. I need to remember that God remembers. He's not leaving us. He's not abandoning anybody. The story is not over. That's this whole creation. That speech remembers you. Now, it's an interesting idea, but sometimes we think things that we just think we're having a thought. But it's actually our speech reminding us of something we need to remember, something important. And that power of speech goes with a person even in an unclean place. And this is the power of the exile. The concept of the exile of the Shekhinah just means that the divine goes down to a very unclean place. Exile, a prison. Shadibor shehu b'chinat hashekhinah b'galut. Now, when you want to speak and you can't speak, that's the idea here. That there's this idea that I want to connect to Hashem, I want to talk, but the idea is in exile. I can't talk. My heart is closed, my mouth is closed, my throat is, whatever it is. That's the idea of the galut of speech. And that can happen to a person, rather often actually. Nig'ale, but still, nonetheless, Hadibor hu b'chinat hashekhinah b'galut. Okay, again, this idea that even though we're in exile, and even though we don't have a conscious awareness of the divine presence, we can still be redeemed. We just got to open the ear. We just got to look and listen. Listening is the power of kingship. Nelamti dumia, and this verse from Tehillim is an interesting verse. Ne'elamti dumia. It literally means I became silent and speechless. From Lashon Ilem, a mute person who can't speak. That there's this. That's the verse gives us the idea of this exile of speech itself, and of certainly of the divine speech. If not, Elim, a mute person, righteousness they will speak. Okay, so we know that when the Torah was given at Mount Sinai, every sick or unwell or broken person was healed. The blind suddenly could see. The speechless were able to speak. The deaf were able to hear. The bent over and were able to stand up straight and strong. How is this? What kind of miracle is this? Because that's the nature of divine light. Whatever divine light hits in the physical realm, it expands, it grows, it manifests healing and strength. Okay? If that divine light hits a carrot, it's going to become a very big carrot. You know, if it hits a person's mind, you become a much more wise, powerful, clear person. Wherever the divine light hits, it makes that thing its best. Haynu tzedek, zeh malchut kedisha kenoda. And righteousness, tzedek here, it's righteous, but it's also the idea of justness, being just, or justice, if you will. Zeh mit malchuta kedisha, because we always ascribe to God as being a fair judge. Now, there are a lot of people that say, well, God doesn't look too fair to me. Look what's going on in the world. Great people are suffering and terrible people are having a great time. Now, this is a classic theological question, why bad things happen to good people. We're not going to talk about it now, but we have to believe that God is fair or just. We might as well get off the train. Who wants to be in a world with an unjust God? Who needs a God that's unjust? Better to have no God than an unjust God. So, as Jews, certainly, we're taught that God is just, and if we look for it, we find it. In my own life, first and foremost. When I see what happens to me that's good and what's not good, both of them I see have wisdom, have understanding, and are filled with teachings. So God is just because he's seeing a much bigger picture. We don't see our own histories. We don't know ourselves well enough to know if what's going on is really just. But when you do know yourself, that becomes godly knowledge. Okay, so if I don't believe God is just, okay, suspend your disbelief. Don't believe God is just. But ask him, show me you're just, God. Show me your truth. Show me how you deal fairly. And he'll show you in your own life. Mida keneged mida, as we say, measure for measure. The way that the rabbis teach us this is by charity. They say, you don't believe God is just? You can test God with charity. How? God, I'm going to put on tefillin this morning. I want you to show me your great light. No, it doesn't work that way. You might merit to see the light of tefillin one day in the future. God, I want to see your light. I'm going to give charity. Show me that you're just. Yes, go for it. Go for it. Give $10. You'll see you'll get the $10 back and then some. And the rabbis say we can test God on charity because that's where his justice is most revealed. Because, basically, face it, we're all dealing with money all the time in one form or another. And when we give our money away, that's a statement of pure self-sacrifice. And when we sacrifice ourselves, guess what? We're being godlike because he's sacrificing himself to create us because we're part of him. Okay, so when we self-sacrifice, we are becoming an image of God. And when we do that, he's like, we're drawing him to us. And charity is the easiest, fastest, quickest way to see it. And if you do it and you don't see it, then you got to say, wow, something's wrong here. I gave charity and I don't see anything coming back. Well, King Solomon also says about this, in the majority of days you will find, the famous verse, throw your bread upon the waters. In the many days you'll see it return. Now, how long is the many days? I don't know. I seem to find it happens very quickly. Now, maybe I have small faith, so I need I need help. Right? We all need help. But when you see it coming back, when you see that God's just, you want to serve him. He's a good boss, He's fair. Okay. So this idea that God is just leads us back to what we need to fix. He tells us like this. Because when we're in exile, the speech is silent. You don't hear God when you're in exile. Now you want to, let's say. You're in prison. You're like Joseph in prison. You want to hear God. You talk to him all day long. But the heart is closed. You're angry. You're hurt. Your brothers sold you into slavery. You got these terrible people down here in the pit with you. 13 years. 13 years. You know what that is? And your father, Jacob, is one of the billionaires of the Middle East. He's one of the most famous, righteous people in the world. And yet here his son, one of his favorite sons, is down in the pit. Well, he doesn't give up. He keeps talking. He keeps talking. Whether or not God answers, that's his business. But I'm going to keep talking because I'm not giving up. I believe. And therefore, by continuing to speak to Hashem, even though we don't hear him, we fix what we damaged. What did we fix? The things that we did before in the past. In other words, what we call here, the Rebbe calls vidui devarim, confession. Confession's a heavy word. Catholicism has ruined that word. It sounds terrible. You go into a box and you tell the priest, and, confession is just being truthful. I did it. I'm sorry. I might feel bad. I might weep. I might break down on the floor. I don't know. But I know what? One thing. I feel better when I've been truthful. So confessing, being truthful, is the beginning of the process. And when we do that, he says, take with you words. Bring me words. God is saying, bring me words. Bring me your truth. I can deal with your truth. Can you deal with your truth? That's usually where we break down. That we should always tell the truth, give over our truth to God. There are times where I told God, God, I hate you. I hate what's going on. I hate the world. And when I come back, I hate myself. And then afterwards I said, well, God, I don't hate you. You're a big mirror in the sky, and I'm just reflecting my hatred. I hate this, and I hate that, and I hate terrorists, and I hate this group, and all kinds of hatred is out there in the world. You see a bad news story, you hate the criminal. But that hatred is really my lack of understanding. Because if I had godly eyes, I would understand why the criminal did it. I would understand why the terrorist did it. I would understand why there are wars, why there's suffering. But unfortunately, my mind is a little small for all of that. And so I hate my small-mindedness. So, when I turn it back to God, I say, God, take it away. It's your deal. It's your deal. It's your world. I'm going to pray for the best. But I'm not going to allow myself to hate myself and God and everything else because I don't understand. That's like adding, salt on the wound. It already hurts bad enough that I don't understand things. And then I put salt on the wound by saying, I hate that, and I hate this. I hate when I trip, and I hate when I lose money, and I hate when I spill my coffee on my new suit. Okay, that's not hatred. That's just not understanding what's going on. Okay, and when I come back around, and I say, God, I'm sorry I hated you. I'm sorry I felt these feelings, but I'm a small human being. And when you take those true words to him, you have a ticket right into the palace, right into the throne room. God wants to hear your truth more than all the other noise in the world, believe me. Because there's plenty of noise, there's plenty to be heard, and he's got a station, he's got a listener everywhere. Because he is the power of listening, and that's the power we need. And when we get that power of listening, then we're able to hear the truth in our hearts, and then we're able to connect to that true speech, and then our speech becomes an expression of his speech. Because when you can tell the difference, you're not going to want to say things that aren't real, that aren't true. So this Torah is going to go on and repeat the ideas and bring in some new ideas. But I really just, like I said, I had to get this out. I had to share this with you because, this Torah gives me hope. After 30 years, I'm going to do it again and again, every day. It's a new story. It's a new world. It's a new Torah. And it's a new challenge. And we're not quitters here. We're going to stick it out because we're in for the long haul. We're with Hashem. And the Jewish people have been that way for 4,000 years. And why give up now? We've already paid the dues. It's time to gather in some fruit, So come back to the land. Come visit us in Israel. Check out how it's working. And you'll see that the Torah is still alive and well in Eretz Yisrael. God bless all of you. Have a great night. And continue to look for us on Patreon, on YouTube, on Facebook, on Web Yeshiva, everywhere we go. Because, speech never leaves us. It's always here around. God bless.